it feels so risky just to my emotional health.
Oh, you're not being a peacemaker.
It's the lack of information.
Right.
Testimony.
I think I may still have the mentality of a teenager.
The questions that I had for you today were basically about TikTok. Because TikTok is a place that I don't know very well, or I don't know it at all, really. And you seem to be pretty familiar with it. How long have you been doing TikTok?
Technically, I've been doing TikTok for, let's see, honestly, since about 2020, like late 2020, like during the pandemic. It was kind of on and off. I was doing it under a different username. And then that username ended up getting banned after the Bisbee, Arizona thing happened. And then I came back, same username, but then later found out that like all these other people, the username was J Golden Shadow, and all of these other folks were like primarily ex-Mormons, were doing something similar with prominent church history folks and things like that. And I was like, you know what? I can't be associated with these folks, especially since I'm doing pro Latter-day Saint content. And so I switched it to Latter-day Lion. And it's only been within the last year that I've been doing it a bit more seriously, going live and connecting it also with my YouTube, which I've also been doing for just under a year now.
Okay, so a little bit newer to YouTube. But 5 years ago, TikTok was not what it is today, right?
Oh, no. Not even close. Not even close. Like, the circumstance that we kind of saw ourselves, if anybody had read the Wall Street Journal article, it was far worse 5 years ago than it is now. Like, for whatever reason, and this still is kind of the same now, TikTok will still try to push out ex-Mormon, anti-Mormon content out to people. And for a lot of people there, that really kind of shook them. And so while I haven't necessarily been on the front lines as long as some others, Jasmine Rappley would probably be another one. Another one would be Book of Mormon Squad. They've been doing this a lot longer. They saw just how bad and how much bullying there was from the ex-Mormon side in particular. And it was bad, like really bad. Like it was bad when I got on there. So it yeah, I'm not entirely I am glad that there have been a lot more strides. Like if you go on there now, especially if your For You page has been catered to such, there's been a lot more pro Latter-day Saint content out there. A lot more people who are unafraid of sharing things like mission calls and various scripture readings and things like that. And it's been a tremendous shift.
So there's been a tremendous shift specifically in the LDS space. That's what you're referring to, right?
Yes.
The platform itself hasn't changed much in 5 years?
There's been a lot of changes, I would say. As far as Latter-day Saint and ex-Mormon dynamics, there has been, where the scales have kind of balanced, at least in my mind. It may just be because of my For You page being as curated as it is. Of course, I don't necessarily go out of my way to block people personally. There may be some of my moderators during my lives who do that, but like as personally, I don't really do that. But there may be something about a lot of the ex-Mormon and anti-Mormon creators blocking me.
Okay.
So
it feels more balanced because you're not exposed as much.
Right. Yeah. But there are plenty of other people who will kind of notice the same things. There are plenty of other creators within what I guess has just kind of become the Book of Mormon Squad community on TikTok, and as well as other Latter-day Saint creators that have just found themselves with their For You pages a lot better. Like, even though they haven't necessarily been blocked by other ex-Mormons or things like that, one of the things that we're noticing is that, some of the more prominent ex-Mormons during like the last 4 or 5 years have either slowed down in their content creation or have seen a significant reduction in their views when it comes to their content.
Yeah, we've seen that in YouTube as well. So what's the difference in broad strokes between TikTok and YouTube? Because I'm familiar with YouTube, not with TikTok.
Yeah, so this was something that I think YouTube has been trying to copy with YouTube Shorts, but it is primarily short form content that loops after however long the video is, and it's the algorithm is a little bit different than YouTube Shorts, where YouTube Shorts can allow you to go up to 3 minutes. However, TikTok can allow you to go up to half an hour. So you could put full length videos on there if you so want, so long as they actually get the traction. Um, but the one of the bigger features I would say that is beneficial for TikTok is their live streaming. Like when you get live access, or at least to go live on your own personal channel, it creates a little bit more of a community. You can actually bring people up onto different panels and things like that, especially if you're either just hanging out or if you have a particular discussion. Um, and I think that's one of the things that allows people to kind of have that broader strokes interaction with one another is those live streams. You can create content, and a lot of the times that's usually how you can get live access on your own personal page. Um, but there have been people who've been able to get personal live access just by jumping on and being on different panels for however many hours.
So you're finding the utility and the ability to have these kind of idea discussion platforms, but I'm assuming most people are on TikTok just for entertainment purposes, not necessarily.
Most are, yeah. And there's always going to be like the weird dance trends and things like that you'll see coming across, because TikTok will always push those out. Um, and so if you're going to be doom scrolling the entire time, you're going to come across something like that. But TikTok, just like every other platform that has come across in recent years, social media and otherwise, has been very useful when it comes to sharing the gospel and correcting misconceptions about the church and things like that. Just with yeah, go ahead.
So correcting as opposed to other platforms like TikTok has some kind of advantage to correcting.
I think so, because while, like, we'll take for instance YouTube, right? Where YouTube is actually, pretty useful when it comes to doing that kind of thing. You don't really have that opportunity unless you set something up ahead of time to, like, okay, let's have an in-depth discussion. Let's get right into brass tacks. However, with TikTok, you can just go live whenever you feel like it and have these one-on-one or one-on-7 or whatever type of discussions where you can actually hash out those ideas in real time. There doesn't necessarily have to be a set schedule. And people will sometimes find you as they're scrolling through the For You page, or will see that you're live if they happen to be following you or whatever. And it allows, I think, a greater access to community with that. I get people's trepidation with TikTok. I really do, given that it's not necessarily a US based company. It's more China, and there's a lot of issues surrounding China recently. But the here's kind of my thing. When it comes to the dispensation of the fullness of times, the algorithms, the technologies that we have allowed for greater access to the gospel and be able to allow what Joseph Smith prophesied to be able to spread the gospel to every nation and clime. And if we're able to reach just as many people where the church currently doesn't have a missionary effort there, like for instance, I've spoken to people in Pakistan, in Egypt, and in Afghanistan on TikTok. And I'm sure plenty of other people have when it comes to the gospel and things like that. And the church doesn't have any missionaries there, primarily because of those governments. But things like TikTok allow us to, in real time, reach people who normally wouldn't otherwise be reached.
So why did you choose TikTok? Was there something that pointed you in that direction specifically?
Despite how old I am, and I am a lot older than I look. um, I think I may still have the mentality of a teenager, despite being more than twice the age of one. Um, and A lot of it, I think, kind of has to deal with just kind of how quick things go. Now, I have since moved over to longer form content. I have seen the benefit of YouTube,
Well,
and
so
the reach
five
of it.
5 years ago, 5 years
Yeah.
ago, something pulled you in that direction,
hmm
and it was like when you say the teenage brain inside of you, is that like attention deficit type of stuff pulled you in that direction?
Kind of, yeah. I would, as much as I would be loath to admit that, yeah, that's kind of the case. The the circumstance that kind of pulled me toward TikTok was that, like, there just wasn't as much. I didn't really see a lot of value in YouTube at the time in 2020. Like, there was a lot of of circumstance there, and I tried getting into Vine, but the 6 second time limit just wasn't wasn't doing it for me either. Um, but like, Vine had basically been canceled, and there wasn't really a lot of decent content on YouTube at the time. And in the midst of the
Putting
pandemic, and
specifically to LDS content.
yeah, well, not just LDS content, but just like a lot of decent content too. Like, and it could again just be a lot of my what was going on with my feed at the time. Admittedly, I was a bit more into politics than I am now, especially. And so a lot of the stuff that was being recommended to me was more political stuff, but not necessarily the political commentators that I wanted to listen to. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll just give TikTok a try. And so I downloaded it, I signed up, and I found that I not only enjoyed watching the content, but I also enjoyed seeing how other people were responding to others and like, hey, I could probably do that too. And so I started doing that little by little. Um, in 2021, I kind of did a lot of responding to comments, a lot of what we call stitches, but basically taking another person's video, like a clip of another person's video, and responding to the video. Um, and it was fairly simple. Um, and then I saw more and more people starting to get a little bit more professional with it, like getting microphones, getting cameras, editing, and things like that. And while I wasn't necessarily doing anything in depth, there were a few editing apps that I was able to download onto my phone, and doing some quick stuff that way, and things. Um, but over time, I not only was able to learn a little bit more about how the app worked and how to attract people, but also to uh really implement and build a community with it as well. And I think a lot of that has been very helpful as far as building like other social medias, like especially YouTube as well. Because when I announced that I was creating a YouTube channel and was doing a little bit more serious about that over a year ago, or less than a year ago actually, um, there were plenty of people who already kind of migrated over. Now there are some people who don't have a YouTube channel, and it's mainly because many of them will uh kind of protest YouTube because at the time, especially in 2020, it was right in the middle of, it was like right in the middle of the adpocalypse. And I don't know if you
Oh,
remember that
yeah.
at all. And so a lot of people were like, you know what? I don't want anything to do with YouTube. I'm going over to TikTok instead. And while there are some limitations to TikTok, it didn't feel like it was quite as restrictive at the same time as YouTube at the time in 2020.
Okay. Okay. So do you have a personality that you would consider a little more creative, like on the artist side?
A bit, yeah. I mean, I spent pretty much my entire childhood and most of my adult life in the more entertainment side of things. And while I'm not necessarily doing it professionally by any stretch of the imagination, I love being able to perform. Uh, like in my community, we have community theater. We have we have the like every Christmas we do the Messiah, like sections from Handel's Messiah. The last few Aprils we've done uh, Lamb of God around Easter. Like there's all these different performances that are happening all throughout the year that people are a part of, and my family and I try to be a part of as many as we can as well. The kids say they have fun, so I don't know if they're actually telling the truth on that, but they claim they are. Um, but we've always been the more creative side. I have a master's in screenwriting and have written a few films as well. So yeah, I would say that I am very creative in that sense, and I like the creative aspects. But I also really love the gospel and finding a way to mesh the two without hitting my microphone. To mesh the two has been, I think, probably a really good blessing to be able to recognize and see, hey, this is something that like our natural talents can be used to help spread the gospel, especially the restored gospel of Jesus Christ.
Well, one of the things that I'm interested in exploring, I have not gone to TikTok or Instagram or Facebook. Like, YouTube's basically the only thing I've done. And it's the only thing I've really consumed. And it's fascinating to me that like you and I can come face to face and have like totally different experiences, probably because there's like personality differences and stuff, but we both want to help in these different spaces. And one of the things I did notice, I can't remember, maybe a year ago, I started running into Travis's content, and it like blew my mind. I was like, what the heck is going on? Where is this coming from? And I had no idea that there was a whole movement, basically, on Facebook and other places that I was just completely unaware of. Because YouTube didn't figure out that LDS content existed outside of General Conference until like 2 years ago. And YouTube, I guess, woke up to it and kind of started putting things together. But one of the reasons why I shied away from creating content is because I'm conflict averse, and I just don't think it's helpful. And so I would have seen the anti-information on TikTok or wherever, and I basically say like, I don't have time to deal with that. I don't have the emotional space, the bandwidth, capabilities. Like, it's not that I'm like scared of it. I don't think. Maybe I am. I don't know. It's not that I worry for my testimony. It's just like I don't need it, and I don't need to be fighting that fight. You guys come at it from a completely different point of view. You're like, I see this and it needs a response, and I'm going to dive headfirst into this.
Yeah, the reason why we take that approach, at least why I take that approach, I'm not going to speak for anybody else, is because even though, like, kind of along that same line with you, like, this doesn't really affect my testimony, but I've seen it affect others. I've seen how these things affect other people who may think they have a good testimony, but they don't necessarily know the answers for this. And one of the things, there are two quotes. One is apocryphal because I haven't been able to find a direct source for it, but another has been something that's been quoted by several of the brethren, especially Elder Holland. And the first one is a quote that's attributed to Neil A. Maxwell that says, "We should not let our critics have uncontested slam dunks against the church." And the second is a quote from Austin Farrer, which, again, quoted by President Holland, which I think is fantastic, is that while argument does not create belief, a lack of one destroys it. And part of the reason why myself, and I would imagine, folks like Travis Anderson and several of the other Latter-day Saint apologists too, like Colton Miller and others, will do it because there are so many people that are just so they have a testimony. They know the gospel is true, but they may not necessarily know how to articulate it, and they may not necessarily have been exposed to some of the more warts of church history, or how people may twist some of those aspects of church history or the doctrines, and so that ends up causing them a lot of problems. Kind of like when Peter took his focus off of Christ on the Sea of Galilee and started to sink. The moment that those types of things really cause a problem for those folks. And I think that's the issue that we see here, is that, okay, we need to be able to showcase that the gospel of Jesus Christ is still true, that the things that they experienced through the witness of the Holy Ghost is still valid, and that these things, yes, they can be viewed through the lens of a fallen world. That doesn't necessarily negate the truthfulness of the gospel. And the more that we study it, in fact, one of the things that I personally would push is that we should be studying more. don't just stop because you find something that is so
Yeah.
like that may rock your world. Don't stop studying, keep going, and you may actually find out, oh, hey, it's really not as bad as I thought, or it's really not bad at all. People are just twisting it to make it seem that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not the abundance of information that destroys the testimony, it's the lack of information that destroys the testimony. So, yeah, and this is why I wanted to talk to you. I do want to have more courage in getting into the space where I can defend and contest a little bit better, more comfortably. Because I'll tell you what it's like for me. Someone who's not a performer, really, and someone who doesn't have like a strong artist side. Like I watched YouTube for years, basically for all of the how-to videos. I'm a maker, I'm a fidgeter, I'm a widget builder, and that's what I like to do. And I love the gospel. So then when it comes to developing courage to do something like defend the gospel face to face with somebody, it's not that I am afraid that I won't have the right answers. It's just the tension alone, the tension of even having all the answers and having like a constructive conversation. I just get so exhausted so fast, and eventually I bow out just because my head hurts. And so one of the things I would like to do better is be able to consider myself a defender. And I think YouTube has potential for that space, but TikTok seems to be a firestorm of that space. Like if I try to go on TikTok, I've probably spent like a total of 10 minutes on TikTok. And each of the times I try, it just feels so chaotic. It feels so risky just to my emotional health.
Right.
But you don't seem to be bothered by that. You're like, yeah, we love the chaos and like all the firestorms. This is why we're here. We're here because it's chaotic, and this is where all of the kind of harsh voices are coming. And so we're coming to be the contest to those harsh voices, and you have to match chaos with chaos. Is that fair? Like,
and essentially, I mean, that it doesn't happen that way all the time, but yes, I mean, it's basically a vocalized version of sometimes the most rage baity Facebook threads. I don't know if you've ever experienced those at all, where like, someone is just saying so objectively wrong. It was like, okay, nope, no, and just go keyboard warrior on them. What we're looking at is essentially that in many cases, especially the more people there are on a panel. When it comes to my own personal lives, I try to limit it to like one, maybe two or three on a panel at a time. Sometimes I my mods may let other people up, but I feel like the most constructive conversations happen when there are just like the one or two people that are up there. So that way it is more of a back and forth type of deal. But yeah, I mean, sometimes like when it comes to TikTok lives, you do kind of have to embrace the chaos and just kind of get into the feeling of the moment. But it does, just as a bit of a warning, it does lend itself, if you're not careful, to cross over into the spirit of contention. We are contending, so to speak, but it doesn't always cross over into the spirit of contention. But it can, as these heated arguments can sometimes go. And so I think that's one of the things that I think we need to recognize with that. So.
oh, thanks. I appreciate that comment. All this helps me understand quite a bit better what's going on over there, and I will pray for the courage to start crossing over into that space and see what's going on. Have you thought about the peacemakers principles and how that plays into contending for the faith versus having the spirit of contention and all that?
There is a difference between being a peacemaker and a peacekeeper. And I think a lot of the times people have this misunderstanding that being a peacemaker is like, oh, we shouldn't rock the boat. We got to let people, like, let bygones be bygones kind of deal. But the thing is, that's not always the case. In fact, I made a couple of videos on YouTube that address this, because a lot of people would like to throw that out to me constantly, and will say like, "Oh, you're not being a peacemaker. Don't." It's like, well, hold on a second. This isn't what President Nelson said. This isn't what the Lord said, or even demonstrated in the scriptures. It's not even what any of the other prophets who have shown how to be peacemakers throughout church history. What and it really helped me understand to differentiate the difference between being nice versus being kind. And I think a lot of the times people would think like, oh, if you're not being a peacemaker, you're not being very kind. No, a lot of the times what they expect is you to be nice, but that also means being a doormat. And I think that's the kind of problem that a lot of people have, is that when they come across a Latter-day Saints, they don't expect us to stand up for ourselves. They don't expect us to be like, well, hold on a second. No, this is just wrong. When we think about being a peacemaker, we avoid the spirit of contention, which is, contending with anger one against another. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't contend at all. This is an example that is often brought up, but I think it's very apt, no matter how many times it is brought up, is with Abinadi. Abinadi, I would classify as a peacemaker, especially when he's in King Noah's court. And I think the big issue with that is a lot of people don't realize, like, if they were to come across Abinadi today, they would, tone police him and say, oh, you're not being very Christ-like, you're not doing all like. But the thing is, though, is that he exactly was. My family and I, during our Book of Mormon study, we just finished First Nephi 17, where Nephi shocks his brothers into helping him build the boat. And he's straight up telling them, like, why are you so hard in your hearts? Why are you being doofuses, basically? That is being a peacemaker. Sometimes being a peacemaker requires that we have and we use harsh language in order to bring people back to Christ, so that they can experience the peace that only He can bring. It's not being nice, but it is being kind. We wouldn't, if we see someone we love going down a destructive path, do we just let them go? If they insist on taking us along down that destructive path, do we go along with them? Or do we try to bring them back to the safer path, to the same route that Christ wants us to be on? And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand when it comes to things like being a peacemaker. We need to be in line with what Christ wants us to do. We need to be in line with what the Lord expects of us, and follow the commandments no matter what. And if we are unwilling to be obedient because someone that we love is going down a path, and we're not trying to bring them back, that's not being kind. It is being nice, but it is essentially being a doormat.
Yeah.
And allowing us to go down that same path with them, and we become just as guilty as they are.
I think that's a wonderful way to put it. I remember when I was making poor decisions, I had a friend who said some harsh things to me. And later on, I was talking to him about it, and the way he described it was, I don't say those things to hurt you. I say those things to wake you up. And it's because I love you. And the love motivates you to reach out and help someone, even if the help is very uncomfortable or even shocking. But you never do it to hurt. I mean, the motivation is never to hurt somebody. Well, cool. This has been a lot of fun to kind of get a different perspective on it, one that I'm not as familiar with. The collaboration space works the same on TikTok, I'm assuming. Like, everybody has their own channel, their own space or whatever, and then you can come together. But when you do it on TikTok, somebody joins from their channel. Like, you can see their profile. Like, when I post this on YouTube, I have to tell everybody who you are, because nobody knows. Right. Just because you're here, that it doesn't like have your little logo anywhere or whatever. But on TikTok, somebody joins from their TikTok profile, And so you see the two profiles, or the 3 or 4 profiles together, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then if somebody doesn't have a TikTok profile, then they're not going to be joining those spaces, right?
Right.
Okay.
So I mean, well, and that's kind of the beauty of it, right? Like, if you join someone else's live, it is from your profile, and people can access your profile and follow you directly from that live, and you actually get some rewards from that too. But yeah, I mean, and like you said, like on YouTube, you have to tell everybody who I am, direct everybody to my channels and everything like that. But there's not such a focus on that when it comes to TikTok.
It's interesting. The platforms work differently that way, and then therefore cater to building a circle, a community. Yeah, it's interesting. Because that's one of the things I've struggled with on YouTube is like collaborations don't ever really feel like collaboration. They like this is a collaboration, and yet when I post it on my channel, you don't actually have to be credited for anything. You could just be whoever I want you to be. You don't get to choose who you are on my channel, which so it doesn't feel like a strong collaboration. It feels more like I'm hiring you to entertain my audience for a minute. Like it just feels weird.
Right.
Are you on the other platforms like Instagram, Facebook?
Yes. So yeah, Latter Day Lion on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and X. So
Yeah, X is the other one.
yeah, I don't go on X as much,
Yeah.
but it can be useful. But honestly, I found that X is what many people, even though yes, it's run by Elon Musk, it just the amount of vitriol and filth that is on X. I have an account. I go on there from time to time. I don't go on there as often as I used to. I'll just say that.
Yeah, that's another platform that I had to really figure out how to make it work for me. And I've probably spent a total of maybe like an hour, a couple hours on there. But it took me about 10 minutes to figure out that I could not use the home screen or whatever that thing is at all. I couldn't go. The only thing I could do and enjoy it was go to the page where it's the follows. It only shows the people you follow. And so I could navigate to that page and feel pretty good for a little while. And when I stopped, the following. So if I did the following, then I was like, okay, I can do this and like love myself afterwards. But if I do the for you after like just a minute or two, I'm like, oh my gosh, I hate everything. This is terrible.
Right.
All right. Thanks again.
Yeah.
We'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, Scott.